Every life is governed by forces we cannot see. Some call it willpower, others call it discipline. But beneath all of it lies a single molecule, a silent messenger that whispers to your brain what is worth pursuing and what is not. Dopamine is often misunderstood as the chemical of pleasure, but in truth, it is the chemical of pursuit, the invisible current that determines whether you will rise when it is difficult or remain idle when it is easier to stay still. It is not the reward itself, but the spark that makes the reward seem possible. Imagine it as the divine engine placed inside you, urging you to move forward, to seek, to hunger, to reach. Without it, victories taste hollow. And with too much of it spent on fleeting distractions, even the most sacred calling can feel empty. This is why understanding dopamine is not merely science. It is the difference between being enslaved by impulses or becoming the master of your destiny. Every decision you make is preceded by a release of dopamine. It is what lifts you from apathy into action. It whispers to your nervous system, this is worth chasing. Some chase shallow pleasures and spend their dopamine cheaply, draining the reservoir meant for great works. Others learn to conserve, to direct, to channel this force into pursuits that echo with eternity. Think of prophets, warriors, reformers, those who endured the deserts of hunger and silence, yet still pressed on. What carried them through was not comfort, not the ease of instant satisfaction, but the inner drive fueled by dopamine aligned with vision. Science shows us that dopamine is not about having something in hand, but about anticipating it. The surge does not come when you hold the fruit, but when you reach for it. This is why endless scrolling, empty entertainment, and shallow indulgences leave a soul feeling restless. They flood the system with short-lived peaks, and in their wake, the baseline drops lower and lower. Soon the mind craves more and more for less and less, until all drive for meaningful pursuit is drowned. This is how destinies are stolen, by trading eternal drive for momentary sparks. But the same system that enslaves can be sanctified. When you learn that dopamine is a tool, not a tyrant, you begin to awaken the deeper truth. It was designed not for mindless consumption, but for sacred striving. It calls you to set your sights higher than instant reward, to lift your gaze beyond the immediate, to embrace the discipline of pursuit over the ease of indulgence. In every trial, in every struggle, dopamine can be directed like an arrow aimed at destiny. The surge that once pushed you toward distraction can be rewired to push you toward purpose. In the scriptures, the promise is always preceded by the wilderness, the crown by the cross, the harvest by the plowing. This is not just spiritual metaphor, it is biology written into the flesh. The reward circuits of the brain are designed to light up most brightly not at the end, but in the striving itself. And so, when you choose to discipline your impulses, to withhold from cheap rewards, you are not suppressing desire, you are sharpening it, elevating it, purifying it. You are training the system that God Himself placed in your brain to serve something greater than the moment. To know dopamine is to know the structure of your own willpower. It is to see why the weak are ruled by their cravings and why the strong are willing to endure pain for a vision others cannot see. It is to understand why patience feels heavy, but also why patience transforms you. For dopamine does not bless the one who consumes everything in sight. It blesses the one who can endure the hunger, who can stretch forward through drought, who can burn with longing yet not sell their destiny for a bowl of lentils. This is the sacred chemistry of drive, the invisible signature of purpose etched into the brain, waiting to be mastered by those who refuse to bow to lesser gods of fleeting pleasure. The baseline of dopamine is the quiet river that runs beneath your life, the level of drive you carry without even thinking, the foundation on which all motivation is built. Then there are the peaks, the towering surges that flood your system when you chase something or achieve it. Together, baseline and peak determine whether you are propelled forward with strength or dragged down into despair. If your baseline is low, even great victories feel muted. If your baseline is strong, small acts can ignite extraordinary momentum. This is why some wake with fire in their bones and others struggle to rise from the bed. The chemistry of pursuit is different within them, sculpted by their habits, their disciplines, and the choices of what they feed their mind and body. When you live on constant peaks, sugar, social media, shallow pleasures, you rob yourself of the baseline. The nervous system cannot sustain perpetual highs, so it compensates by lowering the foundation, leaving you emptier, hungrier, restless. It is like drinking salt water. The more you consume, the thirstier you become. Over time, this leads to exhaustion, a chasing of shadows, a feeling that nothing is enough. But when you learn to guard your peaks, when you stop giving them away to trivialities, your baseline begins to rise. The same tasks that once felt dull become infused with energy. Work, prayer, study, training, these no longer feel like burdens, but as expressions of drive aligned with something deeper. The ancients understood this in their disciplines of fasting, silence, and sacrifice. To withhold from immediate peaks was not just spiritual symbolism, it was a rewiring of the very system of motivation. In the absence of constant stimulation, the baseline grows stronger, like muscles strengthened under resistance, and from that higher baseline, your capacity to endure suffering and pursue greatness expands. You are no longer tossed about by every craving because the foundation is firm, rooted in something beyond instant gratification. Every peak matters. Every time you allow your system to spike with worthless indulgence, you trade away a portion of your destiny. But every time you choose restraint, every time you let the baseline rebuild, you are sharpening your edge, storing power for the pursuits that truly matter. Think of the warrior who does not waste arrows on shadows, but waits for the true enemy to appear. Think of the pilgrim who endures the long road, knowing that the promise is not in the shortcut, but in the journey that builds strength. This is the blueprint of dopamine. It rewards those who align peaks with purpose, who learn to elevate the baseline not with noise but with discipline, who understand that the true battle of destiny is fought not in moments of glory but in the unseen regulation of the self. The hidden cost of overstimulation is subtle, silent, and at every notification that pulls your eyes, every endless scroll that promises relief, every sugar rush, every shallow thrill, they all carry a price, and the currency is your drive. Dopamine is not infinite. It is not designed to be spent without wisdom. Each spike burns through the fuel that was meant to carry you through trials, through work, through sacrifice. And when that fuel is squandered on distractions, there is nothing left for the battles that truly matter. This is why so many feel drained before the day has even begun, because their mind has been taxed by worthless peaks, leaving the baseline dry and the spirit restless. Cheap dopamine deceives you. It offers the sensation of progress without the substance of progress. It tells you that you are achieving, when in truth you are only consuming. The screen glows, the food satisfies, the entertainment distracts, but afterward comes the emptiness, the weight of knowing that nothing was truly built. It is the modern version of idolatry, offering devotion to fleeting pleasures that steal strength from the soul. And like idols, cheap dopamine demands more and more while giving less and less in return, until the worshiper is enslaved. Science confirms what Scripture has long proclaimed. The eyes and ears are gates to the soul, and what passes through them rewires the deepest circuits of the brain. Overstimulation hijacks these gates, flooding them with signals so constant that the system becomes numb. What once brought joy now feels bland. What once inspired awe now feels ordinary. Relationships lose their depth, work loses its meaning, prayer loses its fire, not because these things are less valuable, but because the brain has been conditioned to only respond to exaggerated peaks, leaving reality itself dulled and gray. But within this truth lies a warning and a promise. If cheap dopamine can steal destiny, then disciplined dopamine can restore it. The one who withdraws from overstimulation is not emptying their life, but cleansing it. In the silence after the noise, in the fasting after the excess, the baseline begins to heal. The small becomes beautiful again, the ordinary sacred, the simple task powerful. This is why those who guard their attention, who limit indulgence, who fast from constant peaks, rise above others with unshakable energy. They are no longer pulled by shallow currents. They move with the steady force of a river directed toward the sea. To reject overstimulation is not weakness. It is warfare. It is standing against a culture designed to keep you scrolling, consuming, and craving. It is reclaiming the throne of your own mind, declaring that your drive will not be auctioned off for likes, clicks, or momentary highs. The true cost of cheap dopamine is destiny lost, but the reward of restraint is destiny fulfilled. The choice lies in every moment, every impulse, every decision to spend your peaks on shadows or to reserve them for the light of a higher calling. Intermittent reward is one of the most powerful laws etched into the nervous system, and when harnessed, it can transform ordinary effort into extraordinary momentum. The brain is not built to be satisfied by constant gratification. When reward is predictable, the dopamine system adapts and weakens. But when reward comes unexpectedly, when it is sprinkled through struggle like flashes of light in the dark, the system ignites with fire. This is why victories after toil feel sweeter than instant success, why breakthroughs after repeated failure feel sacred, why even the smallest blessing after a long wait feels like a miracle. The human spirit was designed to be tested, stretched, and then rewarded, not endlessly indulged. Those who understand this principle learn to use it like a weapon. They do not expect reward at every step. They embrace the uncertainty, knowing that the very delay and unpredictability sharpen their drive. A student who studies without the guarantee of instant mastery, a believer who prays without the immediate answer, an athlete who trains without applause. Each of them is building a nervous system primed for resilience. Their dopamine peaks are not spent cheap, they are amplified, waiting for the right moment to explode, driving the baseline higher and higher with every act of endurance. This principle is the foundation of every great story. The scriptures echo it: 40 days in the wilderness before the revelation, years of wandering before the promised land, nights of silence before the dawn of deliverance. The delay was not punishment, it was preparation. It was the shaping of a nervous system capable of carrying the weight of destiny. Every time the reward seemed withheld, the baseline was being strengthened, the drive deepened, the vessel enlarged, and when the blessing finally arrived, it did not merely satisfy, it transformed. Science confirms this. Studies show that dopamine rises most powerfully not with predictable outcomes, but with uncertain ones. It is the not knowing, the striving, the maybe that fuels the greatest persistence. This is why gamblers are trapped, why adventurers press on, why visionaries endure mockery and failure, because the brain is wired to release more drive when the outcome is uncertain. The tragedy is that many waste this mechanism on trivial pursuits, but those who align intermittent reward with holy purpose harness a force that can outlast fatigue, pain, and despair. Intermittent reward teaches you to find joy not only in the arrival, but in the striving itself. Every act of discipline becomes its own reward because the brain learns to anticipate meaning, not mere pleasure. And when meaning fuels dopamine, you become unstoppable. You are no longer addicted to certainty, you are addicted to growth. You no longer crave instant results. You crave the journey that forges you. You no longer measure success by how quickly it comes, but by how deeply it changes you. To harness intermittent reward is to take the design of your own biology and aim it like an arrow at destiny. It is to say, I do not need the prize today, for every step is preparing me to carry it tomorrow. It is to declare I will not bow to impatience because I know that waiting is not empty. It is fertilizing the soil of greatness. And when the reward comes, it will not be fleeting because I will have been forged into one who can hold it without being destroyed by it. To reset the dopamine system is to return the soul to its rightful rhythm, to restore the balance between baseline and peak, to cleanse the vessel of noise so it can again carry the fire of destiny. The nervous system was never meant to be in constant stimulation. Just as the land requires Sabbath, just as the body requires sleep, so too the dopamine system requires rest, environment, and deliberate deprivation. These are not weaknesses, they are weapons. The sacred tools by which you reclaim drive from the grip of exhaustion and overstimulation. Rest is not laziness, it is the foundation of renewal. In deep rest, the brain recalibrates, rebuilding the baseline that endless peaks have drained. Without it, your system collapses into apathy, no matter how strong your desire. But with it, ordinary actions regain their energy, the smallest effort becomes meaningful again. Sleep, silence, stillness, these are not optional luxuries, they are the furnace in which motivation is reforged. Even the Creator himself rested after labor, not out of weakness, but to demonstrate the divine rhythm by which all life thrives. Environment is the sculptor of the dopamine system. What surrounds you either fuels your drive or robs it. A cluttered environment breeds a cluttered mind, overstimulated by distractions and robbed of focus. But a clean environment, marked by order and intention, becomes a sanctuary where the brain can reset. Sunlight in the morning, darkness at night, the pull of gravity felt through movement. The quiet power of nature. These are not poetic ideals, but biological necessities. The system thrives when aligned with creation, when the body is placed in rhythms that echo the rising and setting of the sun. To live cut off from these rhythms is to live at war with your own biology. Deliberate deprivation is the most powerful tool of all. To abstain is not to weaken yourself, but to sharpen yourself. Fasting from food, from screens, from noise, from constant indulgence allows the dopamine system to restore its sensitivity. What once felt dull becomes vibrant again. What once seemed ordinary shines with meaning. Deprivation is the whetstone on which the blade of desire is honed. Those who fear it remain dull and enslaved. Those who embrace it become warriors of focus, able to endure when others collapse. The world teaches you to always add more pleasure, more noise, more distraction, but the nervous system thrives in subtraction. To reset is to strip away the excess until only what is necessary remains. And in that sacred emptiness, the baseline rises, the drive strengthens, the soul awakens. The one who learns to rest deeply, to shape their environment with wisdom, and to embrace deprivation with courage becomes unshakable. They no longer depend on cheap peaks to carry them because their foundation is strong, their baseline alive, their system aligned with heaven's rhythm. This is not merely recovery. It is resurrection. It is the lifting of the soul from the grave of overstimulation into the vitality of destiny. It is the realization that true strength is not in constant activity, but in the discipline of rhythm. The mastery of cycles, the willingness to pause, to withdraw, to cleanse, so that when the call comes, the system is ready to surge with holy fire once more. To align dopamine with purpose is to take the raw fire of drive and place it upon the altar of meaning. It is to say that your pursuit will no longer be hijacked by shallow pleasures or fleeting rewards, but will be directed toward the vision that heaven has written upon your heart. Dopamine on its own is blind. It does not know good from evil, destiny from distraction. It only knows to pursue, but when you bind it to purpose, when you yoke it to a mission larger than yourself, it becomes the engine of destiny. The same molecule that enslaves men to addictions can liberate them into greatness when aligned with sacred calling. Purpose turns ordinary effort into eternal momentum. A man without purpose wastes his dopamine on vanities, endlessly chasing, endlessly empty. But a man with purpose finds every task infused with meaning. Even the smallest act becomes a stepping stone towards something vast. The same neural system that once pulled him toward screens and cravings now pulls him toward prayer, study, service-building, sacrifice. Every peak of dopamine, every surge of drive is reserved not for shadows but for substance. This is how legacies are built, not by erasing desire, but by sanctifying it. When dopamine is aligned with purpose, fatigue does not conquer, pain does not halt, mockery does not dissuade, because the drive is no longer fragile, no longer dependent on comfort, no longer enslaved to cheap highs. It is anchored in something eternal. The prophet who cries out in the wilderness, the reformer who endures chains, the mother who sacrifices without applause, all of them burn with the same neurochemical fire as the addict, but theirs is refined, directed, consecrated. Their drive is not wasted on what fades. It is poured out on what endures. Science confirms that when dopamine is tied to intrinsic goals, growth, contribution, faith, meaning, it produces greater resilience than when tied to external rewards alone. The peaks are sustained, the baseline elevated, the system fortified. This is why those who live for purpose outlast those who live for pleasure. Pleasure fades, purpose multiplies. Pleasure drains, purpose restores. Pleasure ends with emptiness, but purpose transforms, suffering itself into fuel. To shape destiny, you must choose carefully what your dopamine serves. Every pursuit is an offering. Every spike is a sacrifice. Will you burn your fire on the altar of distraction, or will you consecrate it to the calling that has been placed within you? If you align it with vanity, your drive will collapse when vanity fades. But if you align it with purpose, your drive will be inexhaustible, because purpose is a well that never runs dry. This is the final blueprint. To master dopamine is not to suppress it, but to surrender it, to let it be ruled by the highest vision, to bind it to the eternal rather than the temporary, to consecrate the very structure of your motivation to the destiny for which you were created. When your drive is aligned with purpose, nothing can stop you. Not fatigue, not fear, not temptation. For the same system that once enslaved you becomes the very force that carries you into the fullness of your calling, shaping not just your days but your destiny.